Hello, guys. So today we will be having a joint collab with Raf and Livia about the sixth book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen, the Bonehunters. And just before that, I think we can just have a cheers because we all have our beers here. So cheers guys.
Cheers.
Welcome.
Ooh.
Cheers.
Sounds great.
Cheers.
I've been wanting to do this for so long.
Yes. Watching Raf's videos for so long, doing this.
Yeah.
Finally.
So with me today, we have Raf. I'm sure all of you know who he is because he makes amazing Malazan content. I believe you've just finished, or you're about to finish the Crippled God, which means actually you'll be the first read-along YouTube channel to finish the whole 10 books, which is a huge achievement. And yeah, like especially with me, you've helped me and my reading experience for so long with your recaps about each book. So thank you, Raf, for being here with us today. How are you?
Thank you, and thank you for all the kind words, because yeah, I finished it today. I finished it this morning, then I had a bit of a cry, and then I have not yet recorded the video for the end. I'll do that after the collab, I guess. But yeah, I'm done now. And it's a weird feeling. And I'm really glad that I can help at least one person with my read-along videos.
No, yeah,
so I'm good. I'm good. I've like, as I said, I've like just been carrying around boxes all day long because the glory and glamour of the music industry.
And also we have the wonderful Livia, the Malazan potato noob, and she has actually just finished Bonehunters. We're almost reading buddies because in a way we're reading Malazan for the first time, and we are about to start, we've just started Reaper's Gale. And she's also an awesome member of Iskar's Discord because she shares many of her read-along experiences there. And if you haven't checked it out, she posted recently a beautiful video reacting to chapters 22 and 23 of the Bonehunters. So I'm going to link that video down below in the description box below. But if you haven't seen that video, you really should, because it was raw and beautiful and amazing. So how are you, Livia?
I am great. I'm excited for this chat. So excited.
I'm glad. Yeah. So yeah, so today we're going to talk about the Bonehunters. Some general ideas about the book. Raf, because you've read the books how many times? How many times have you reread?
I read them 3 times now.
3 times.
Yeah.
Okay, so now in retrospect, when you, after finishing the book 3 times, you look back and what do you think of the book? How does it compare to the other ones, would you say?
I feel like it's not my favorite book, but I feel the Bonehunters is sort of an important book in the series, because the Bonehunters, I feel, is the book, especially also when you read it for the first time, but also when you read it for the second or third time. It's like the Bonehunters is the book where you finally kind of get the entire picture of where this whole thing is going, because before that you have all these other stories that are set on different continents and introducing all these different characters and stuff. And at the end of the Bonehunters, or near the end of the Bonehunters, you kind of have that moment where you realize where all these different books, where the stuff that happens in Midnight Tides and the stuff that happens in House of Chains, and where all that stuff is kind of coming together in a way. So I feel it's a super important book for that, because you finally realize where the whole thing is going.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
And Livia, what did you think? Because it was your first time reading it, so.
It's my favorite one this far. I absolutely loved it from start to finish. It was amazing. So vivid all the time, and the immersion was fantastic. And like a roller coaster of feelings constantly. And you never knew what was going to happen next. I really loved that. It could have been anything.
Yeah. I kind of feel the same, because like in a way I feel like I'm more attached to the Seven Cities continent more than the other places if I had to choose. And it also feels a bit nostalgic. I'm not sure if we're gonna go back to Seven Cities, because it feels like this trilogy of Deadhouse Gates, House of Chains, and the Bonehunters is in a way finished. I'm not sure if it's the case or not. We'll see. I know, Raf, you have the answer.
Look at that
No,
file.
I will try very hard to not say anything that goes beyond the Bonehunters.
Yeah, because you're used to having collabs with the veterans, right?
But even there, it's like I think when we did the talk I had with Counselor for Dust of Dreams, even there we tried not to spoil anything that comes in the Crippled God. So I'm trying really hard not to say anything. I'm not going to pull a high fist and talk about a certain character.
So what themes would you say are the most prominent? Because I feel like this book had very obvious and very important themes. Livia, what would you say was one of the most important ones?
I think the one that really struck me the most was the approach on gods and religions and everything connected to that, especially because it hit close home to me, because I come from a very religious family, but I am very, very agnostic. So yeah, experiences happened. So it was that part, I really, really loved it. And all the approaches from different stories, different characters, it all came together. Now I really love that.
Yeah. Raf, any other themes you would say are maybe?
I feel it's like when it comes to that whole thing, I think it might just be one of the most straight up military books of the story, because we spend so much time with different parts of the army, as compared to some of the other books where you also have a large part where you talk and hang out with all kinds of civilian people. But this one is very much that. And what I really found interesting is the way of foreshadowing, or not foreshadowing, but the way of building pressure that you have in the first part of the novel, where you have that whole way when they all go to Yagatan, and you have that whole build up, and like from like page 1 on, you have all these small details that all lead to that one big scene there. And that way of tension, of building tension, I feel is like a super important thing in the Bonehunters.
Yeah.
That's true.
Now that you mentioned Yagatan, I'm not sure if the pronunciation is okay or not, because
I heard it's Yagatan. But
Yagatan, okay.
Yeah, I'm not
okay,
completely
good.
sure.
I think right now I'm gonna keep saying Yagatan because I don't want to confuse
Someone's
things.
gonna comment and say how it's the correct way to pronounce it. So don't worry.
Like I've given up on that. It's like I usually go with the pronunciation in the audiobooks, and they say Yagatan, but I think in one later audiobook, when they have just a scene where they talk about it, what happened there, at some point he finally says Yagatan. So
I heard Stephen Erickson say Yagatan, and he was like, wait, what?
Oh wow.
No, I've been saying it Yagatan all along.
Have you also heard Cam Esselman say the word? Because I'm not sure if they always agree on pronunciation.
Yeah, I haven't heard it.
No, I haven't.
When you were reading, when you were approaching chapter 7, Raf, did you know that the Siege of Yagatan was gonna come? Like, did you expect that huge monumental chapter, or were you unaware of that it was gonna come?
I mean,
in terms of the scope and the size, and it's one of the biggest chapters in the series. So
it's definitely one of the biggest in the series. It's not the biggest one, I can tell you that, because I finished that one today. I finished that one today. It's chapter 24 of the Crippled God, is even longer than Yagatan.
Oh,
okay.
By a considerable margin.
Right.
Oh, so a full book.
Yeah, but not almost. I mean, I don't know the page count. I can tell you in the audiobook that the last chapter of the Crippled God is 5 hours and 18 minutes long, and the Yagatan chapter 7 in the Bonehunters is somewhere in the 4 hours and something.
Wow.
But yeah, other people write whole novels in that. So yeah, I mean, the entire scope. I'm wondering when I first figured out what would happen when I first read it, because now obviously second time around you know what's coming, but like I wonder when I first figured out what happened with that whole oil thing and everything. Because
I didn't like
I think
only when
there's a few hints before that when they talk about it in a way. And there's that one scene, and I'm not sure if that's in the chapter 7 or already in chapter 6, because it's a scene from Collab's point of view, where you have that scene. I mean, at some point before that, they talk about the fact that like all the oil merchants were upset that they couldn't sell the stuff or whatever.
Yep.
And then you have that scene where you have Leoman sending off the fanatics, and they all have like jugs of oil around them and torches with them. And I think that's sort of the point where I figured that something would be set on fire.
Yeah,
I totally didn't, totally didn't like imagine the scale of it all.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Livia, what did you think of the chapter? Because that's the most pivotal, I think.
I actually regret I didn't do the same with that chapter as I did with chapters 22 and 23. It was absolutely insane and incredible. I had to constantly stop, take my eyes off my phone, and look around to see. Okay, I'm at home. I'm in my bed. I'm safe. I'm not burning. I'm not being buried underground. It was incredibly immersive. Fantastic.
Yeah. I think it was a very, very cool experience, because I think it was like a novel in a way. It had that tension from the very beginning about the soldiers being so nervous outside. Then it had even that humor with the sappers outside of the walls of Yagatan. And then it had that mystery of magic of the warrens of shadow getting closer to the city, then the fire and the suffocation. Then you had the moments of suffocation and claustrophobia inside the actual tunnels of Yagatan, and then the story with the honey also, and how each of them had their own story. So many things, and then the humor and the tragedy and the deaths. So good.
Yeah, it's definitely. I feel it's like one thing that I find. You said like a novel. I feel large parts of it, not all of it, especially the first part with like the charging of the city and the battle within the streets of the city, and that. Stephen Erickson can have an incredibly cinematic writing style. Like you can take those parts and you can almost imagine like the cuts in a movie, how they cut from one squad to the next and from one person to the next, and how they go into that building and like at some point realize that there's oil dripping through the walls and they just realize what's going on. And it's extremely cinematic, that first part. That's like the whole combat in Yagatan up to the point when they reach that temple at the end.
Yeah.
Of the actual camp, it almost feels like choreographed in a way.
Yep.
I have a whole sequence. That's just super impressive. Yeah.
I have a whole sequence of Death of Pella in my mind. Like I actually see it like a movie, and with the music and everything somehow in my mind. Incredible. Yeah.
I think this sequence can actually be done as a kind of standalone movie, and I think people generally really like it, because I think we have the emotional connection with the characters and everything, but I think it could be a good.
There's also a lot of new characters that.
Yeah, exactly. So it could be adapted.
It kind of reminds me of these, like, those grand scale like war movies like Saving Private Ryan, that opening like D-Day charge on Normandy, or like, because it's more in the city, more like your Black Hawk Down or something like that. We have those movies, but he just transports that into like a fantasy environment. And it's one of those things that he does a lot later on as well, I think, and also earlier as a technique, when he just jumps from like one head of one soldier to the next and does this amazing thing where you have like the actual things that are currently happening in that combat, but you always have these weird flashbacks that show you more about that character, even if it's someone you
Mm.
never heard of before, and then you still get like these small details about who they are and what's their past and their experience and why they're here and all this stuff.
Yeah, it's like a good balance of both. And what I like, I actually like a lot the way he moves through points of views. And I know lots of people don't like it, but for me, it's a lot more enjoyable. And especially in this kind of scenes that have a lot of action, he moves through points of view in a very smooth way. It's like you're in the same place, but you're seeing it from different eyes. And I'm just imagining it like two different cameras filming it and showing things a bit different.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
That adds up to my experience, actually.
Yeah, totally. What do we think of Leo Man?
Oh, we need to talk about Leo Man.
Yeah, because for me, at the beginning of the book, I loved him. I loved him in House of Chains. I think he's a very badass character. And this is why I love Erickson, because he then adds these dilemmas, these, grayish characters that, they're good, but then they do these kind of questionable things. So what do we think of Leon? Raf?
Leoman is very fascinating. I have like the advantage or disadvantage that I've also read the Cam Esselman novels of the Malazan Empire.
Oh,
okay.
He's there.
And in some of them he shows up.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
But I'm not going to go into where and what and so forth. But and that's kind of because what Esselman always does is gives you very different views on the same characters, because they found them in like their role-playing games. Some of those are characters that one of them played or the other one, and you have these situations where you realize that those two people have different views of the same person. So it's the same a bit with Leoman. But I think the interesting part with Leoman of the Flails is that you have him as a very smart, confident, and so forth person that at some point loses his faith, because I'm not sure if he was always like, without any faith, but he certainly is very far from a blind faith that goes beyond like personal survival. And he is still at the same time someone who seems to be able to command absolute loyalty from his followers, which makes him so incredibly dangerous, right? Because he can command like fanatics in a way. And I know it's like that thing where you have like I'm the German, I probably have to pull that one out, but you have that idea of like when you see the end of World War II and like this idea of like that final conflagration and battle in Berlin or something, that even though it was like obvious for like everyone else to see that is like super dumb and ridiculous, you still have people that follow that idea, or at that point just that person, to that final point, and then rather go into self-annihilation and self-immolation at that point than actually do the right thing, which makes, I feel, Collab so incredibly valuable as a character and a viewpoint character.
I love myself some Collab.
Yeah, Collab, I think, is one of the I think that was the biggest revelation for me in this book, because I didn't pay attention to him as much in House of Chains. He had really funny moments, but he's hilarious. With the helmet. And when he starts hallucinating, I think it was at the beginning of the book, he starts hallucinating. That moment with Leoman, that was just so funny. I laughed so much with him.
Leoman of the Feathers.
The feathers, that was a moment. Yeah, so good. So good, yeah. What do you...
For me, Leoman is... he's one of the characters that I really loved in House of Chains. And I thought of something. I don't know. I noticed that there's a lot of characters that seem, bad or negative at the beginning, and then Erickson reveals that, it's not quite like that. And I feel somehow it was the reverse with him, at least for me. Because, in House of Chains, Shaikh says, you have lost your faith, so I'm just going to push you a bit aside because I don't trust you. And we were, at least me, I was kind of rooting for him from this point of view, because, you're not like blindly believing in Shaikh, so that's a good thing, losing your faith and everything. And
And
then
he's also like the only competent commander she has, not like all the
yeah,
other
true.
idiots.
And then comes this book where he's like, yeah, he really has lost his all his faith, and he's not taking it into the right places. Let's just say that.
Mhm.
So it basically shows you losing the faith can lead to two different directions, even sometimes in the same person. That one can be we can be seen as a good thing, and the other side destructive and bad.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that. I love that.
Mhm.
I think if he had died, you know, burned with his soldiers of the apocalypse inside the city, I would not have disliked him.
Yes.
I think that would have been okay. You died battling, you burnt yourself, good for you. You tried to take as many Malazan soldiers as you could. Okay, that's maybe questionable to some, but I think it's something acceptable. Him escaping with the Queen of Dreams, the Queen of Dreams, right? I don't
Best
know.
goddess ever.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. And
A
then
bit cowardly of him. A bit cowardly
yeah,
of him. That's
coward.
how I saw it.
But isn't that like the weird bit there that we read that book and we're like, yeah, if Leomund would have died with the others and still, you know, taken as many with him and so forth, that would be okay. And is that any kind of morals you would actually want from anyone in your circle of friends or people that you hang out with? Are you sure about that?
No, the thing is, at least he kind of stayed true to, or I don't know, like
He's pragmatic.
if you're pushing people to really like die, kill themselves, at least do it yourself as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
It sounds malicious by doing that.
I feel what,
Not just crazy, also malicious by like, you know, running away like he did.
no, I feel, this I guess is the interesting bit there is like when you read it again, whenever you do that, look at how often or if ever Leomund, like on the way to Yagatan, makes clear that he lost his faith and how much he is not wanting a final confrontation with the adjunct, and how much his like fanatic like followers, worshippers or whatever, because they kind of, you know, it kind of is a slow switch from fanatic, like from followers to worshippers at during that like flight. See how much he is trying or not trying to actually find a way out and not wanting that conflict, and how much they really, really want that final conflict, and how much he feels helpless in avoiding that, because that's like one of the things that happens in the Malazan Book of the Fallen all the time. That question is like, how does that relation between like leaders and followers, gods and believers, how does that work, and how much like individual power does that person worshipped and followed actually have, and how does that work? Because that's, I feel, is like the interesting thing, the key to Leomund in a way, is to look at, does he actually want that battle in Yagatan for anyone, and how much do other people in his following, including a certain Korab, how much do they really want that final battle? And how much agency and how many options does Leomund at that point actually have?
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
now thinking back. I don't think he. I mean, I think he wanted to disband everything, but I don't think the followers would have been happy with that,
Yeah.
and something else would have happened. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm really excited to see where he goes next, because they kind of disappeared from the book.
frozen in time.
And then I don't know. Let's see. They went away with John Sparrow, who we learn it's actually Whiskey Jack's sister, right?
Yep.
How did you find about that revelation? What was it? Unexpected?
Me,
Was it
yeah.
Olivia?
I don't think I was not surprised by that revelation. I mean, I didn't expect it, but what surprised me was the fact that I don't remember who exactly told her that basically who kind of influenced indirectly Whiskey Jack's death, and I was like, oh, no, because I know lots of people, and even me, at the end of Memories of Ice, were like, oh yeah, why didn't he heal that leg, and etc. etc. And then it was like, just a bit of nudging there, and that happened. Oh, that for me was mind blowing and painful.
I was so annoyed by that in Memories of Ice, because through the entire book, you're like, yeah, fucking let just get it done, man.
Yeah, totally. Also, to finish off in a way, well, I don't know if you want to talk about any other characters, but what do you think of the main characters of the 14th, like Tavore, Tamber, all of these soldiers? Bottle also had a really big role in this book. What do you think of all of them? Tavore, for example, Raf?
I think it's very difficult to talk about Tavore or Tavore, or however you want to pronounce her, until the end, because we don't get that much of her through the entire book, and that's an important thing, that we never see her point of view or anything. It's like, yeah, it gets interesting at the end of the book, but even there, it's mostly everyone else around her, right? It's very, for very few times you actually see much of her like view and so forth. I feel.
Yeah.
And Tamber is fascinating.
Yep.
Did you any of you both from the very beginning know that she was gonna be this Erisal goddess, or because I had no idea up until the end?
I literally expected to have Tamber or Tamber revealed at the end of book 10.
No.
That's what I expected. So that was really a surprise for me to find out about her.
I think
so
there's a few clues where you can figure it out.
Yeah, and the thing about her eyes and
yes, that's the point. It's like you can hear it, see when it's about her eyes. And on the other hand, I guess the other thing though is like, is Tamber straight up the Erisal, or is she just possessed by her? That's sort of the question that you need to ask yourself.
For me,
because those are wildly different things. Because she's also playing around with Bottle, apparently.
Yeah.
Playing
around.
A couple of times, yes.
And even before that, she played around with Troll Sengar at the end of House of Chains, right?
That as well, yes.
That's true, actually. I had forgotten about that.
Yeah, I actually have a thought about that. That has nothing to do with this book, though.
Yeah. I'm just saying, she's certainly around a lot.
I think she was possessed. That's my thought.
Yeah.
But nothing's sure.
Yeah, I think probably she was possessed. Yeah.
I'm not sure if she did it from time to time or it was a constant thing. So maybe we'll find out later.
Yeah. Then also other characters, the other storyline that I really want to hear your opinion on is the one about Hiboric, Cutter, Silara, however you say her name, Silara. The other ones, yeah. What do you think of them? Especially, I want to hear.
I don't think I enjoyed it as much as I expected to, because
how would you ever expect to enjoy that?
to be looking forward to reading it. The thing is, I was never into military fiction, any kind of, but this book and the whole story of the army, it just caught me so much, and I really wanted to know more and more about them. So the part with the other group, it was interesting, but it wasn't as interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, there's two things. Like, the one thing is that military bores me, but what Erickson does, and that's sort of what I feel is the influence from Black Company, from Glenn Cook, is to make these soldiers very, very human. It's like, yes, you have all these, like, you have the battle scenes and you have these action scenes where they're doing soldiery things, but mostly what he does is show you that those people are just very, very normal people, slightly crazy like everyone else that we know, like people. And that's what you get there, what you get with the Black Company and some of the other good military fiction. Where you don't all are, where it's not all about the badassery of extremely well-trained, highly moral people fighting immoral, decrepit enemies or whatever. So that's why the military aspect in Malazan, once you come to this point and start to actually, you know the characters that show up, you know them a bit better. You recognize them. They come back. They're like, people that you know. And once you're at that point, the fact that they are soldiers, while never going away, just kind of fades in the background a bit, because it's more about what happens to them as people and less to what happens to the army. The other thing, though, is like, you look at that plot line with Solara and Felicin Younger and Cutter, and it's like, yeah, a recovering drug addict, a self-pitying cripple, an adolescent teen, and a lovesick preteen, not a preteen, 20-year-old walk into a desert. What could possibly go wrong? It's like, of course it's going to be terrible. They're going to hate each other. They're going to be, it's not going to be fun.
Yeah, I remember when every time I saw that the next chapter was going to be about them, I was like, oh no, please. But then at one moment, I think it's at the end of one of the books, I think end of book 2.
Book 2, yeah.
They get massacred by the Tlanimas that appear from nowhere. I did not see that coming at all.
Yeah.
It was a very harsh scene, I have to say. Like, it made me quite uncomfortable, especially because it had a lot of, the flies flying around, and I don't know, it was just very, very horrible. But I was so happy that Heboric was cut into pieces and destroyed, because I hate him.
Oh, okay. Okay, I think he's an interesting character, but I felt like he was going nowhere, although he was, heading in that direction. But I think I really felt for Cutter, especially when it says he like looked down and he held his guts. Oh my God, that was just terrible.
There's a bunch of there's a few interesting things. There's like, first of all, I mean, Heboric is not a comfortable character.
No.
And he doesn't make it easy to like him.
Yeah.
Hard to love, yeah.
So there's certainly that. The other thing is, like, I feel it's in that whole like trek, you have all these people, and it feels so kind of pointless. It's like, where is this going?
Yeah. Especially when at the end they take, I don't know the character name, but someone took, I think it was a Tlanimas who took Felicin Younger into the city of the Fallen, and then she was worshipped by all the crippled people and the broken ones and all that kind of thing. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe we're actually getting into another Shaikh storyline here. When I read that at first, I was like, what is going on? Now, when I finished the book and, everything happened at the end, I think it was actually good that the Book of Drishna, whatever, opened with one Shaikh, and in the end, the book was closed with another Shaikh. I think that kind of storyline will not be closed. That's my thought. I think no more Shaikhs will come after that, I hope. Yeah. What did you think about that?
Raf has also a devious smile on his face right now.
Oh.
I will totally not say anything to that.
I was a bit disturbed about, I don't know, the direction Felicin was taking, because in a way I felt, she's like really falling into whatever they want what they want her to be, but in the same time she kind of tried to fight it and do it her own way. I'm still very conflicted about her right now, so I'm not sure. I'm actually looking forward to see how her story develops.
You mean Felicin Younger at this point?
Yeah, Felicin Younger. She's the only one now.
I feel like one of the important things to understand with Felicin, both elder and younger, is how incredibly young they each are at this point.
Yeah. Kids.
And
teenagers.
yeah, that's the point. They're kids, and Felicin Younger, I guess, even more than Felicin elder. And that I feel is important when it comes to the fact when it's like, yeah, why does she do that? And it's like, well, how would you have actually acted when you were like 14 years old and abducted by an undead warrior? It's like, how would you work? So I feel that I guess is important. But I kind of get why it is weird to read. It's an uncomfortable read. That part, definitely. Especially when you look at the whole idea of like this place being like the city of the cripples, but you have that, and also a city of like debauchery in a way. And those are both themes that are very, very difficult for us to read, like uncomfortable in a way, because both of those, especially depending on how you do how the debauchery thing goes, right? Edge very close to what you might call body horror, because that's sort of the idea why you feel uncomfortable about the idea of people with disabilities, especially with like visible physical disabilities, like what you might call cripples and stuff like that, or the kind of debauchery that Felicin at that point also starts to indulge in when she just, gets grossly overweight and so forth. All these things, like at a certain point, become very, very uncomfortable for us because they touch on that idea of body horror, of like integrity of our own bodies in a way. Yeah. Plus, on the other hand, that level of like societally enforced or encouraged like body and self-image of perfection in a way. So that makes that part extremely uncomfortable and difficult to read. Once you realize, or like not realize, but once you actually consciously think about the fact that that girl is still like 13 or 14 years old, that doesn't make it easier.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things I want to add because I actually realized I didn't. I'm not going to say much about Tavore because I kind of feel the same way as you do, Jay. I love her because she's so damn mysterious, and I have to admit she also frustrates me from time because I really want to know what she thinks and how the hell does she know everything. I want to know that, but then she doesn't know that she kind of killed her own sister. So yeah, how does that work? But I don't know. I really loved Bottle. I didn't expect it, but I found him a very interesting character. And actually, it's the Bonehunters in general. I enjoyed the fact that we witnessed their birth, basically.
Yeah.
The actual birth, not just, oh, I'm gonna hang a bone on my belt or something. And I remember as I was reading, like, oh, the Malazan army is chasing Leoman, so this is gonna be like, the Bridge Burners 2.0. It was a lot worse, and there's a lot of. I realized something. At some point, Bottle saw the Bridge Burners as very glorious and this wonderful thing, but the Bonehunters felt a lot more, I don't know, crude, and not crude. Their experience was almost like cruel. It was painful. There was no glory there, and I'm pretty sure it was the same with the Bridge Burners, but that got lost in time. You don't see that. You just see the glory and the fame. Oh, the Bridge Burners.
Which is exactly my problem. Which is exactly that point why I don't like Whiskey Jack that much as a character, because because they always tell you how great he is and they never show you because it all happened before.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, from my point of view, I love the Bonehunters a lot more than the Bridge Burners.
Me too.
Because I was there with them underneath Yagatan, trying to breathe.
Yeah.
The experience felt a lot different to me.
Totally.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's one of the strengths when you look at both House of Chains and the Bonehunters, to see how that army, you're with them from the beginning, from that, like when they're sitting in that shed with Fiddler and Stormy and Gessler and all their recruits, and how they kind of figure out how to actually get that shit done, and how they then become like a new family in a way, and how that whole thing works. So yeah, that is like one of the strengths that you can see within that type of like military fantasy, where you like start out with them and see how they become more than just a group of people, but like something like a unity in a way, like a unit, you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
They become something more than just like the individual people in that group.
Yeah. Also, we get a really brilliant addition to the 14th from the very beginning in the prologue, Sergeant Hellian.
Oh yeah,
I think
amazing. I love
we
her.
have to talk about her because she is obviously a highlight of the book. Her fear of spiders from that first prologue, and then she continues being hilarious throughout the book. Yeah, did you enjoy her, Livia?
I loved Hellian. I mean, go watch Quick Jen's video if you guys are interested in it. But what I'm gonna say is that, for example, what I liked about her was the depiction of her alcohol withdrawal. At some point, it felt, I've seen some, so the way she was very self-conscious and suspicious of everyone around her and cranky, and I felt that was very real. So I really loved that. And I mean, we all know the fact that when shit hits the fan, she is gonna do what needs to be done.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Anything to add, Raf, on Hellian?
I see Hellian more as a tragic figure than, I mean, there's a lot of comedy with her. There's even more in Reaper's Gale. I don't know how far you've read it by this point, but I see the comedy aspect, but I feel I was like, I've known people like her. Like, right, I've known people that clearly had an absolute, like, they were alcoholics, right? And those people, when they needed to be like cold and clear and all that in their heads, they could totally do that. And as soon as that was over, they're like useless as hell.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's always a bit of a warning in there as well. You read that and you're like, yeah, she's cool. But you're still like fueling her like addiction in that point, right? In a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. I think also Erickson writes amazing duos. Like, I think every book in the series has an amazing, balance of two characters that really balance each other off brilliantly. For me, the duo, I think this book has a lot of duos, but the duo between Samar Dev and Karsa Olam, I think that was brilliantly written, brilliantly. What did you think of Karsa in general in this book? Because he goes through quite a lot also. I think I've read many things that Karsa didn't have much of a purpose in this book compared to House of Chains. I mean, House of Chains was his big, introduction to the world, but I think he does quite a lot in this book too. So what did you think about that?
I think this is just taking him where he needs to be, I guess. And we learn more about him in, I don't know, together with Samar, if I say her name. I really love their conversations about magic and science and how they go together and how they're not really two different things. I really found that part very, very interesting. I don't know, Raf. I think as well. By the way, I know you.
I think it's like, of course, it's taking Karsa where he needs to be next, but it's very much, this is the book where Karsa as a character grows, as a person grows, because I mean, after his like shock education in House of Chains, this is sort of where he actually finally goes out into the world, because when you think about it, he's rather passive in House of Chains after a while, right? I mean, yeah, he goes down there to do his like murdering children thing, and how could we ever think that was fine? And then he gets ground through the mill, and then he ends up more or less by accident in Sheikh's camp. And he does his stuff in House of Chains, and he starts his growth in House of Chains by actively going out and getting his sword and all of that. But the Bonehunters is the book where he actually finally gets to see the world and realize how big the world is and what's wrong with it and what's not wrong with it, and where he maybe starts questioning his own like pretty like fixed beliefs from earlier on. So I think it's the probably the book that makes Karsa as a person grow the most in a way.
Especially I think with Samar Dev, they challenge each other's assumptions all the time. It's just a back and forth, and I just love those conversations that, you know, it's just challenging each other all the time. And one of the things that I really enjoy of Erikson's writings is, for example, when they meet the Anibar, which is the kind of this culture in Seven Cities, and the level of detail that Erikson writes about all of these traditions and the ways that they greet other characters and just how they interact between each other, and just like the jewelry, the clothing, just everything, the weapons. You can tell that he's an anthropologist, and you know he actually has done this professionally, because the level of detail is just astonishing.
But, and this is important here, he's also a very good writer, which means he mentions that stuff once and then it fades into the background.
Yep.
It's not, he's not repeating every single time what they are wearing, like some authors I could name that are very much fixated on null-binding caps, and I'm not going to say anything more, but yeah, it's like he knows how to put in those details where they matter and then fade them in the background, because like for almost no one else who reads that book, it's not exactly necessary for the story to have all those details. It's nice to have those details to realize how accurate those details are, or how much they, you know, the like pseudo authentic. I'm trying to work a way into like with my broken English to use the word verisimilitude here, but that's the point. It's like what he's doing here is he's describing a culture that could be real, and he's doing that incredibly well.
Yeah.
But for the story, that's not really necessary. We just need to know that they're like primitive, and there's people that hunt them because they're more powerful, and that's it. And that means we don't need to have all these details all the time. We don't need them all the way in our face all the time. It's more like drop them as hints and like small details over the long like track they have with the Anibar. When you have that situation with that snake, is it a snake or is it a turtle? Like, with the rocks that like show the way, you know, that path and stuff like that. Snake, right? When you have the rocks laid as a snake, you have all these details, and I'm like, oh, that's all really just the way it is made. It's like it fits well into the story. It's not just, hey, let me show off my anthropology skills.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
it's not extra stuff. It's
yeah,
it fits perfectly like a puzzle in the whole story. Yeah.
And with that related to the Anibar, we get that really big revelation related to Iskar Jarak and, well, Whiskey Jack. How was it finding out?
For me, it was the best reveal ever. I think my reaction was I just started laughing and running around the house and telling my husband, oh my God, I want to tell you, but I won't tell you because I wanted to discover it by yourself. And I needed to shout it to the world. Oh my God, this is amazing. So yeah, that was so sneaky and so well done. Oh, brilliant. Brilliant.
That's it's fun and it's super interesting. But see, the other point there is that what he does there is like, it's not a cargo cult thing, but it's like it goes in the same direction. It's like we met these people that are like it's sort of like in that whole like post-colonial discussion in a way, right? You have the Anibar. They meet the bridge burners at some point because we already we heard that story of the bridge burners walking through Raraku and all that shit before, and they at some point ran into the bridge burners or into that squad led by Whiskey Jack, and Whiskey Jack told them to be prepared because when civilization comes, you'll be fucked, and and all that, and they just like translated that into their own language of like religious belief and so forth, and made out of him the Iron Prophet because he wore like metal armor and shit like that. And that's a process that you see all over the place. So like for us as readers, you read that it's like, wow, there's a Whiskey Jack mentioned there. I'm gonna celebrate. And on the other hand, it also is that idea of like that sadness in there that you have, like when he came there, it's like, yeah, you're not ready for the world outside, and even by prophesying or like not prophesying, but telling them to get their shit together and prepare for what's going to come. Even in that way, he massively influenced that people in a way, which is a super important aspect to it, because it's like you can't, like, once you make contact to a group of people that haven't had contact with the outside world for no matter how long, once you make that first contact, you will have an impact no matter what you do, whether it's a positive or a negative impact, doesn't matter. The point is you'll have an impact.
Yeah.
And that's what we see there.
Yeah. Yeah. If you had to choose one single moment in this book that you would say, that's for me like that defining moment, not defining, just your most enjoyable moment in the whole book, which one would it be, Livia?
I wouldn't call it exactly enjoyable.
Okay, any type of moment that you want.
I think it hit me the hardest. It was when Fiddler was playing and everyone was and everyone was hearing his song, and then towards the end of his, I'm not sure if he was also singing or just playing, and you could like read his thoughts, and that was just. I still have a hard time talking about that because I get like my voice cracks and but that was just, I think it also brought in the theme of religion and relationship to gods into it, but also they were mourning and trying to get over the pain they had for so long. So yeah, wonderful.
Yeah, that moment was beautiful. Like, it's just like, the book is called The Book of the Fallen, and you read about the fallen, and in any other book that I've read, the people that die, okay, I'm sad at that moment when they die, okay, that's it. But then I just tend to forget about them. I don't really keep thinking about all those people that have fallen in the past books. But with this series, it just, they keep coming up once and twice and thrice again. And then, I don't know, Erikson has this ability to keep them alive even though they're dead. So, I don't know, that was a beautiful moment. I really enjoyed that. Raf, any?
I think it's that moment in general, like, is incredibly well made once again, because you have that point where you're like, throughout that entire, like, and it's a long ass chapter, right? That whole like stuff that's happening in Malazan city, and throughout that entire city you always have all these people that where that like the music that Fiddler plays is sort of, and this is once again one of the cinematic moments where you have like this music that he plays that kind of fades into all these other scenes. And when you have like, even when Collab is running down there and fighting assassins, and he also hears the music in his head and stuff like that, obviously because he's part of the squad of like Whiskey Jack and all of that. But you have all these moments where that music kind of blends over into all these other things that happen at the same time in Malazan Island. And that's incredibly well done. I think I would probably go. One thing that I found incredibly crazily touched me in a weird ways is that's still Bonehunters, right? That's still Bonehunters. That scene, I'm kind of confused for a moment. That scene with Ganos Paran when he walks into, God, which city is it?
Gdanisban, is it?
Yeah, that's the one. When he walks into Gdanisban and he meets that guy that got bitten in the face by Fiddler's horse in Deadhouse Gates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he then at the end of that whole thing in Gdanisban still finds some kind of redemption when he comes to the Temple of Solia.
Yeah.
There's so much incredibly well done about this story because one, it's like a small, completely like this completely small detail from Deadhouse Gates that horse bites someone in the face. Like I've known horses like that, and how that small irrelevant detail like turned that person's life into like after hell from there on, because you know he was like completely like crippled by that in a way, and how that turned him into like a terrible person. And it's like how these small like random irrelevant things on the side influence people. It's like we read fantasy novels, so often we read fantasy novels, and for like whether it's for laughs or for like cool scenes or whatever, a lot of bystanders get harmed in all kinds of weird ways, because that's what happens in a fantasy story, where we usually focus on the heroes, or you know, at least like the main characters. And to bring one of those, like what you might just think be like window dressing in a like former novel, to bring that one person back like 4 novels later and show us all the consequences that came from that one dumb thing that happened like 4 novels ago, and how that first of all has a consequence on shit that happens now, because you know, no one is actually just a bystander in that world. And on the other hand, to still give them that kind of like redemption arc at the end when he comes to that temple and you know all of that, that is just like really, really powerful for me.
Yeah. My question is, does Steven Erikson, when he's writing Deadhouse Gates, does he go, okay, in book 6, I'm gonna go to this city that I, you know, haven't even, you know, mentioned too much, and I'm gonna have this character who, you know, we've seen in this book, and that's gonna have like really important implications for that character in book 6. Like, I don't know how he can plan so far ahead.
That's a very good question.
All these small details, like
someone needs to ask him that.
Like I have no idea. I literally have no idea. What I would guess is that in their role-playing game times, at some point, someone's horse bit someone else's face off, and that stayed in their minds, because it's the kind of thing that you don't think about and don't plan for.
Yeah.
But if you know, with like the dynamics at a role-playing game, a role-playing table and dice rolls and whatnot, that kind of thing can happen, and that can, once it happens, it stays in your mind in a way.
Yeah.
And that's sort of how that came in, and then he figured out like, let's use that again. But that's totally all my guess. I have no idea. Of course we need to ask him that.
Yeah, or as he said, like the editor said, we need to take this out because it's too much, and they said, no, I'm going to use it a couple of books later, so we're not taking it out. So he had to. I don't know.
Who knows? But yeah, but I think the other part about that whole Gdanisban scene is the way where one of those things that becomes incredibly important over the entirety of the series is the rage of Ganos Paran when he talks to to Soliel.
Okay.
And it's like, you're doing this now. Look at all, like, being just there and comforting all the people suffering. It's not your job. You're the goddess of healing. Do some fucking healing right now.
Yeah.
And I feel that's one of those. I mean, there's 2 things in there. One thing that we need to look at is Poliel, actually. and what she does, and why she does what she does, which is interesting as well.
Yeah, I
But
had some ideas.
also that idea of like more or less just rage against the gods, against the power of the powers of the universe. That like, yeah, it's not fair. But saying, yeah, well, that's the universe is not an answer. The answer is, yeah, fuck you, universe. And that's something that we have in the Malazan Book of the Fallen a lot. It's like, yeah, the universe may not be fair, but that doesn't mean we should accept it. We can just like go and be angry at it. And yeah.
Yeah, true. Like, I think,
sorry, go on.
Sorry, go on. Livia, go on. Yeah.
I felt in this book we saw a very different Paran, a more confident one maybe, and I like that. But about Soliel, about Poliel, I was very, I don't know, intrigued by something she said right at the end, right before she died. It was something along the lines that she actually wanted to help Burn. And I kept thinking about it. And also one of the things I think that goes throughout the book that we didn't touch was the destruction of humans, and well, not just humans, on the environment, on the world, because it keeps coming up. And I was just thinking, how exactly was she trying to help Burn by this? And my explanation in my head was, well, you're going to have less people, so they're going to do less destruction on Burn. So it will help. It's not just the cripple god that's giving her a fever, but it's probably the humans as well by doing lots of shit. And less humans, less shit. And that would help. That's the only explanation I had in my mind. Maybe it's something I'm gonna learn later and it's totally different, but that was the thing I thought about when I read it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think everything to do with Gidani's ban, I think that was just really, I wasn't expecting that, because we had a lot of really fast-paced chapters throughout the book, and that was one that was just hectic. It had so much going on. Yeah. And I really enjoyed seeing, because I liked Perrin in Memories of Ice. He was okay, but he didn't really take charge. He wasn't in control of his role as master of the deck. And in this book, I think we finally see him 100%. Especially, I really liked that scene when he goes with the Trigal Guild and the Jagut sorceress into Raf. Where is this place where they go? Which is, I didn't understand. There was a bridge. There was this place of death. I don't know. I didn't understand what place. Can I know? Or
as far as I understood, there's still debate about that, actually.
Yeah, that one is like, I mean, so they go to a place that might just be the underworld of the Jagut.
Oh.
Or something else. I mean, the bridge seems to be part of that, and it's sort of like on that point where like the idea of warrants kind of gives up. I mean, they end up in the nascent. We kind of know that, right?
Yeah. It seems like the nascent and that bridge place, they're kind of connected, but they're not exactly the same, because the nascent.
No, the bridge goes somewhere, and the nascent is sort of the place where they end up with. Well, the bridge is, I guess, the idea of the Jagut underworld, I guess.
Okay. That makes sense. I would say that, I guess, makes sense.
That was lots of lore exposition I loved, but I felt like more than half of it just went over my head.
I
had no idea what was going on there. I highlighted some parts. This is important. I don't know what, but it's important. I'm sure of it.
I would say most of my favorite moments, they're from the Bonehunters. I really like that moment when they go back, all of them, and then Tavore and the other members of the 14th receive them, and that moment when they're carrying the children, that was very nice. But if I had to pick like one really little scene, it would be that scene between Absalar and Squint. I think it was in one of the boats.
Oh, yes. Oh my God.
Beautiful conversation, and both of them, they act as if they don't know each other's identity, but in truth they really do, and that it just shows so much understanding and compassion, and just like
Yes.
it was
Yeah.
so emotionally charged.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite scenes as well. I need to write it down because I started making a list.
Did you
No,
did you
that
enjoy
one is pretty
Absalar
good.
in this book, or
Sorry?
did you enjoy Absalar in general, like in this book?
Yes. It shows she's still quite raw when it comes to her relationship with Cutter. I mean, they're still young, let's face it. They don't really know what they're doing there. But she's learning, and I really loved her relationship with Cotillion. I mean, I started to really, really love Cotillion in this book. He shows he's still trying to hold on to his humanity, and that is amazing for a god.
I love that part when they're all in that, like in the Imperial Warren, where the sky capes fly through, and he has having that meeting with Quickpen and Kalam and Stormy.
Yeah, so chill. Let's just eat, you know.
I feel like I have a personal connection to Stormy in a lot of ways. So I just love that scene where Stormy is just like,
You would have done the same.
very much. I would just like gone and eaten everything that I could find. Like I've been a student for a long time. It's like, you offer me free food, I'll take it. I'll take all of it. But I wanted to come back to that, like, whole polyol things. Like, yeah, environmental themes are incredibly important to the Malazan Book of the Fallen, and they become more important. They show up as early as Memories of Ice, I think.
Yeah, in the prologue.
In the prologue, definitely, but also in that whole thing when Quickpen decides to help Burn and then talks to the priestess of Burn in outside of Pale and stuff like that. It's one of those things. I don't think that's technically a spoiler, because it's not part of the Malazan Book of the Fallen. But when you read, if you ever read, and I think everyone should read it, Rejoice by Stephen Erickson.
I will.
Okay.
Which is a sci-fi book, and it doesn't have the best of plots, but that's not its point. If you read Rejoice, a large point there is to look at the idea of the so-called Gaia hypothesis, this idea that a planet with everyone living on it is one sort of macro organism, and that like everyone in there is sort of important. You need that kind of balance idea in there. And that's something that I feel is important to the thinking of Stephen Erickson as a writer. And it's something that shows up in there when you read Dead House, when you read Memories of Ice there, but even after that. And Polyel is part of that as well, this idea that there's mechanisms to make sure that balance actually stays, and humanity is not exactly the most balanced of species. We're fucking up a lot. We're killing a lot of animals that we shouldn't. We fuck around with the environment a lot, and that's happening. So the idea of Polyel as play, bringing, like, restoring that kind of balance is something that is very much in that universe in a way, and something that is, I feel, important to Stephen Erickson as a writer.
Oh, okay.
That's actually a very interesting thought. Yeah.
I didn't know this about Rejoice.
Yeah, I can't wait. Is it okay to read Rejoice in the middle of the Malazan Book of the Fallen, or would it be?
Yeah, sure. It's a science fiction book that has nothing to do with Malazan.
Okay.
I just feel it gives you an insight into the overall idea, like way that Stephen Erickson thinks about it. Also, it's very much about praising Ian and Banks, and that's like always good. But yeah, it's more like a political pamphlet with a plot around it.
Okay.
So do you have any little gripes about this book, or big gripes? Anything you would have changed if you were Stephen Erickson? Anything you would?
I have one. it's
Yeah,
not.
okay.
I mean, it's not exactly a gripe, but it's a thing that bothers me.
Mhm.
In the way that I don't understand how it works. So they've been traveling the desert and they've been trying to catch up with Tavore's army, and they just can't because they can't get to her. And then
Who?
Quick Ben
Ah,
easily travels from Solia's temple. And one answer that I got that I'm not exactly satisfied with is like, oh, it's easier to travel from a temple. But I was like, yeah, okay, they were with Quick Ben could have done some, I don't know, amazing shit that he usually does to just somehow travel or get a message quickly to the 14th. And, not have so many people back dying of thirst and hunger and carrying kids with them. Why?
Yeah,
Because
did
the
you have?
plot needed it to happen. That just bothered me so much.
Mhm.
And that's it.
Do
oh,
you?
you mean after Yagatan when they're
Yeah,
walking?
exactly. When they were trying
Okay.
to catch up and they couldn't. And they even sent what was her name?
Masan Gilani.
Yeah. And well, she kind of failed. So that didn't work either. But then Quick Ben, like, oh, travel. Easy. Couldn't you do that before?
I think, yeah, the idea there is that it's about direction, that you have like a fixed point that he travels to, which in this case is because of the whole like things like you need to know where you're going to. And
Okay.
with the temple and
That
all
makes
of that,
sense.
he knows where he's going to because it's also linked to his sister, so it's linked to a person.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking when he left from the temple, and I just don't remember exactly where he went. I'm not sure if he caught up with the fiddler and the gang, or I'm
He
not
just
sure.
went straight back to the place of the ritual because they had the dolls where he's connected to, so that's where he came back to. And that's the point. It's like he goes to the temple to save his sister, and he comes back in that exact circle where the puppet that he's connected to is. So that's the point there. I still see your point. It's one of those reasons, one of those situations where they're like, yeah, but it's magic. You've never explained all the rules of magic, so why can't he do that?
Yeah, especially since Quick Ben usually like pulls something out of his multiple sleeves of Warrens.
I was going to say he pulls something out of his ass, but I mean, when you said multiple, I was like, okay, that's going to be 12 souls he may have, but
yeah, multiple.
Who knows?
This is why I love like the magic in this world so much, because you never know what's gonna happen. Like you never know if a character will travel somewhere else to save someone. You never know if they'll have to end up traveling for so many kilometers throughout this desert. You never know what characters will do with their power. It's really unexpected, and that's what I really it has this mystery attached to it so prevalently that
What gripes did you have, Jake, with it?
My biggest gripe for sure was the whole Dejim Nebral thing.
Oh,
and I didn't enjoy that at all. My opinion is that it was used purely as a kind of plot device to free the Deragoth, something like that. Because it didn't have any purpose, and it was positioned as this bestial, monstrous thing, and in the end, it was just killed. I don't know. I'm not sure if it was definitely killed, at least the last one, but I don't know. I didn't really like that storyline. It felt a bit like it didn't go anywhere in the end.
True. I completely forgot about it, actually.
It's not anything memorable. In the prologue, that scene when the nameless ones free this Dejim Nebral thing, that was incredible. I loved it. And I thought it was going to go somewhere, but in the end, it was just
Yeah, and it felt really strange because like, oh, you need the Deragoth to kill it, and then you have Masangalani kill one just like, oh, with a knife. I guess she's badass. Okay, let's face it. And sometimes that it's easier for humans to.
I think there's like one thing that's important there is actually the idea of time and times changing. And when you read the Dejin Nebra, and I'm not saying it's like my favorite like plot line, it's not. But it's very much about this idea of things that were powerful in the past, expecting things still to be the same, and Dejin Nebra is an example for just using like brute force, basically. And yes, the Deragoth are also like brute force mostly. But it's not exactly like the Deragoth like stay with us for a long time or anything, right? They're not exactly like super important at the end of the book. But the point is, I feel it's very much about this idea that you have that past with Dejin Nebra and the First Empire and all this shit going on, and then he comes back and expects to just be king of the world because he's so fucking powerful, but he's so crude at the same time that like modern times just don't work, which is exactly like the same thing with the Deragoth as well, because
I think with race,
the hounds of shadow just lead the Deragoth like around by their noses, basically.
Yeah. Oh, true. I didn't see it this way up until now.
Yeah.
See, this is why we need a veteran too.
This is why, like, there's so many underlying philosophical kind of reasons why these things, come in. So this is what I love about these books. Are there any other storylines we haven't touched? We haven't really talked about Ikarian Mappo or that kind of storyline on Rack Troll.
Escarpos, Smogora. Oh, there's so much happening in this book. I think it would take like 3 hours to actually go through everything. I'm not even sure how people talk about like the rest of the books that follow, because they seem like thicker and thicker. So
we just ignore more and more of it.
Okay. I think there's a couple of things. One thing that I really enjoyed was Captain Farragon's sword. She is introduced specifically for the reader to hate her because, she kills Joyful Union, right? Like the first second you meet her. And, it's like you really, because I'm pretty sure readers love Joyful Union in House of Chains. And then you expect, and I have to admit that happened to me on Discord. We were like, oh, Joyful Union will appear again. And like, I think it was half an hour later I read it and, oh yes, it does appear again. It dies. And that was, no. So everyone was like, oh, she's dead. But then it turns out, she literally saves everyone. Well, everyone.
Well, I guess it's that point where we learn that not even scorpions have plot armor in the Malazan Book of the Fallen.
Nobody has plot armor.
I love that.
Yeah, that is great. A quote from Raf I will remember forever.
That's really good. No, yeah, I really enjoyed her character. I thought she was fabulous at the end. I couldn't believe that Joyful Union was killed. Like, I was like, this must be a dream. Like, it can't be real. Because I think one of the most epic scenes of all the series is that scene in House of Chains with the scorpion fight. That one is one of the best scenes. And then the fact that the main character of that amazing scene was killed all of a sudden.
Guys, how hard do you hear the bells?
No.
Okay.
Now I hear some. Cool.
Yeah. No, it creates
I can go close the window then. One other thing. Something I really enjoyed lately I'm sure that happened before and like from the start in Erickson's books, I just didn't realize it. I mean, also, watching all those people teaching us how to properly see into how literature is made helped. It was, what was his name? Anrada An?
Yeah.
The way, I mean, even I think the first time he's presented, it's him like thinking about home, and this is like an ongoing theme with him. He just keeps thinking about it, and it's like his safe place where he wants to go.
Yeah.
And you don't really pay much attention to it because it's like, oh, it's like the place he loves, good. But then you just need, I mean, Stephen Erickson does this, and I love it. He says like one word at the end before dying, and then it kills you. Like he says hope, and it's painful, and he builds it up, and then one word or one phrase is enough, just to completely shatter you. I absolutely love this. And
you have no idea what's coming for you.
Oh God.
When people say that, I'm just like, oh my God, I'm not prepared for the last couple of books. Really, I'm not prepared. And like one moment that is kind of related to what you just said was in the first throne setting at the end. I think it was probably the last chapter of the book. We have these two children playing in front of Onrag.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, yeah.
We get like one paragraph of these children only. And it's not because they're children, because they're undead children. It's not like they're normal, happy children. But one of them just gets an arrow through its head, and just the shock of, I think, her brother or his sister. It was just so horrifying. And it was only after one paragraph of us describing those children. It was, God.
Yeah.
Really well made. It's
I know what you mean. I mean, I guess like one of the things that is so important that like I've learned over reading Malazan like is the distinction between undead and alive, and Jaghood or human, or that's not a distinction that we should make. They're people. That's very important to realize. It's like the idea is that we tend to think about like they're not humans. They're like, I don't know, they're Jaghood, they're Talani Mass or whatever. The problem is no, they're people. They're a sentient species, and they have a soul and they have feelings. Even Talani Mass, after being undead for like millennia, and the same goes for those children. Yeah, they died on crosses in Deadhouse Gates, and that's cruel as fuck. But now they have been revived. That's the point. It's like they are alive. That's the point. That's why it hurts so much, because they are not undead children at that point. They are as much like living children as anything else.
Speaking of death, actually, there was something else I wanted to bring up. The bridge burners, at the end of Memories of Ice, I was like, oh, they're going to be back and it's going to be like the same. Nope. Reading through like the first part of the book, when they really like kind of show up, it felt like it would have been better if you had just simply died, because bringing them back somehow, it feels like a lot more painful for them, and they really like over it. They just don't want it anymore, and it felt painful. And with all the hype that I felt at the end of Memories of Isaac, ooh, we're gonna see some more bridge burners. Right now I'm like, ugh, I really wish we didn't, because there's death and there's death or non-death. I'm not even sure how to call this, but I don't think they deserve this. I mean,
I guess that's like one of those interesting things that we have like recently, that is that debate that like people coming back in Malazan Book of the Fall all the time, and that would actually invalidate death in a way, or devaluate it. And when you look at how some people come back, I would say no, it does the opposite. It's like coming back is not exactly,
Yeah, exactly.
it's not a picnic.
Yeah, and they're not exactly like they used to. They're
Yeah.
different. There's something else changed.
Yeah, especially with
Except
Ed.
for maybe Paran, who was kind of himself still, but the rest,
Paran didn't die. He just
he
like
was that close to dying.
I guess that's the point. It's like you go through that gate, you're fucked. You come back, you're like, well, maybe you're Hedge.
Yeah.
Well, that's about it. But everyone else is,
Yeah.
coming back's not fun.
Yeah.
It sure looks like it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So,
yeah.
Livia, because you're still, on your first read, like me, what predictions would you have for at least the 14th in the next books? Where do you think it's going to happen with them? What do you think it's going to lead to in the future? What do you think?
I didn't even think about it that much, because I'm sure that whatever I'm going to think about, it's not going to be true. I mean, up until now, it was so hard to predict anything because, think about the moment when you start in Gardens of the Moon and so much happened this far. It's like so different. You wouldn't even imagine, like thinking back of myself reading Gardens of the Moon, I would have never imagined so much and going so far and getting to know so many new characters and new civilizations. It's like, thinking of the universe, you just can't grasp it with your mind. You think you do, but you don't. So I don't know what would happen to them. I'm pretty sure they're going to find some more. I have to admit, I've seen the Dramatis Personae for Reaper's Gale, and there's a lot of 14th Army there. So I'm expecting some more with them, but I have no clue, literally no clue what they will do.
Yeah, the thing is that, like you say, like the cast of characters can change so dramatically. And especially like if you compare it, who you thought would be the main cast of characters more like in the first books, you would think Whiskey Jack, Dujek, One Arm, Tattersail, you in the first from the second book, Felicin, you would think those are the first, like the main ones. You look now to this book, Dujek, One Arm was literally killed off screen. He didn't even.
That was amazing.
That was like, and these new characters coming like now to the forefront, and the Bonehunters and Tavore, and it just makes it all so unexpected. Like you never know which characters are gonna end up making it till the end, or it's very exciting.
I know Tavore will. I mean, I'm not sure if she's gonna die or not, but she will make it to the end. The rest, I have no clue.
Yeah, but it will be interesting. Do you have any other, Raf or Livia, do you have any other things you would like to talk about? Anything that's left mentioned? Something?
We didn't talk about Mappo and Ikariam. That's sad because that one is like, I mean, the friendship that drives Mappo is like, I feel like that's like one of the things we always talk about, this idea when we talk about Malazan and like Isko Jarek's like Discord or wherever we talk about Malazan being about empathy and compassion, and it's like Mappo is that person, right? He's doing all of that all the time. It's like instead of saying like, I've done this for hundreds of years and it sucked because it really sucks. Like, no, I'm gonna keep because Ikariam's my friend. I'm gonna try to actually make sure he doesn't destroy the world, which
Mappo breaks my heart all the time.
He kind of does that a lot, all the time.
Yeah, not true. And it was very interesting to see their dynamics when they break apart, because it was we saw them in Deadhouse Gates being together, and it was nice. It was beautiful friendship, then caring for each other, and Ikariam was shown as this very tragic character, but they were together, so it was really nice to see them apart in this book, especially with Ikariam. I always thought of him as this very childlike character, and I don't know, in some scenes, for example, when they travel to the Throne of Shadow, and I think it's Shadow Throne who makes an illusion about the throne.
Oh yeah, that's
and then Ikariam looks back and she sees Shadow Throne and it just smiles.
he
You know,
realizes.
these tiny glimpses make me question whether Ikariam really is as innocent as and childlike as he seems, because
He is.
I think he is, but he's
he
also
very
smart.
much is. He's just also, and I think it's like something that we learned over time. It's like he is very much averse to conflict of every kind, right? And he doesn't want to go there and fight for the Tist Edor and their throne. He doesn't care about that shit. So when he goes back and he sees that that's just an illusion, he's like, yeah, fuck it. I didn't have to do that. Awesome.
Yep.
That's sort of the point there. He's still a very childlike person.
Yeah. Yeah, true. Yeah. If you have now to describe the book just with one single word, that word that you would label or you would tell your friends, you know, this Malazan book, this is about da da da, and it can't be anything too long, just one kind of word.
Can I do two?
No.
Well,
you know what's really incredible? Before you
Yeah.
you know what's really incredible? We spoke about all of this and we never ever talked about the showdown on Malaz Island.
that's true. We touched the fiddler playing part.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yes. Yeah. So they go to Malaz Island and watch a concert performance. That's sort of like how and Collab gets caught in the mosh pit. Sort of.
Oh God, Raf. Yes, that is true.
No, but that battle scene between Callum and all of the Claw assassins, that was I enjoyed that fight much more. I was comparing it to the end of Dead House Gates when he goes to Malazan.
Does the same basically.
Yeah.
It does basically the same thing. This one, it just kept going for, I think it was 60 pages of my book, and I was gripped. I couldn't even stop reading all the time. It was so well choreographed, and then, you know, you had these like moments when he throws the acorn and then Quick Ben doesn't appear and he says, oh, I'm a bit fucked. And then, you know, that tragedy between Pearl at the end when he decides to kill Callum with the venom. Yeah, that was very tragic.
We didn't even talk about Lostarayu and Tenebralta, and so many characters got them.
I want to with the Empress, because I feel like Livia and me, we were very lost in terms of that conversation that they had in the throne room with the I was very lost. I think they've told me that we get to know more of her motivations and why she's acting like that in the novels of the Malazan Empire. Is that right?
We certainly get a very, very different picture of the Empress in the novels of the Malazan Empire. I would say that much. I think it's sort of in there no matter what, because like you read that, it's like, yeah, she's desperate for all kinds of reasons and so forth. And there's like this one option, which is like Kalam takes over the claw, kills everyone and so forth. And for that, she needs to sacrifice Tavore. And he does that, and hopefully also kills Corvalodon and Malik Rel, and things go on. And yeah, there's a whole thing about Lessene that needs, like, that's complicated. It's more about this whole idea of like how you actually create empires, how you run empires, and who's qualified to do that. And spoiler alert, the people creating empires are not necessarily qualified to lead them.
Who
read your Roman history?
Who is in the end? By the way, there's one thing that I wanted to say. I felt that in this book, we got to see a more positive image of the empire, maybe compared to other books, because you could also see, you know, how it was. I mean, there was the rebellion, and there were lots of people part of the rebellion, going back to, I don't know, how was it, Farad or something, the rulers of the cities, and they were depicted very not in a positive way. I felt it was like, changing rulers doesn't mean you make things better.
I think like the point with the empire is the empire. It's not all good. It's not all bad. It's like they bring specific aspects, and that's part of why they are that successful. It's like, you know, they cut down on local corruption and so forth. They bring like technical and bureaucratical advancement and so forth. But there's still a foreign power, and those are sort of where the problem is, because the idea is like, we bring you democracy, so we are better than you, is only half of the coin, because the other point, half of that is like, we're still like foreign people forcing you to do things the way we want them to do to go, and that's sort of the thing that you always have with an empire. That doesn't mean that like for a lot of like local, like especially like lower classes and so forth, life improves under the empire. It does. It's the same thing in like real world, like in the real world often. It's like there's gonna be people that profit from like a foreign power coming to your country and doing all that stuff. That, yeah, of course. So it's very difficult of thinking of the empire as just evil or good. That's not the point. They're an empire, they're doing empire things in an empire way. And if you want to weigh the benefits and the negative sides, you're gonna have to use empirical ways.
I love that. I love that.
Oh God. So good.
I never come up with those things. I don't know why. I can never come up with such brilliant.
I do, like 2 days later, when it doesn't matter anymore.
No, but I feel that's like one of the things that we learn in the entirety of the Malazan Book of the Fallen, because it is very much a debate on that whole idea of colonialism and all these things. Like, do like colonizing powers bring benefits? Of course they do. Do they bring a lot of problems? Of course they do.
Also,
and like the idea of making a simple yes or no judgment is something that is very much inimical to the Malazan Book of the Fallen in general.
Yep.
Yeah, totally.
To get back to your question, it's hard to give a one word. It would be either visceral, but that's just parts of it, or roller coaster feelings for me.
I like that. I like that. Yeah.
That's how I felt throughout the book.
Raf, what's your word? What would you say?
I guess I would say
anything.
I guess I would say fire, but because that's like sort of when you said earlier, what's like the criticism. I think my main issue is that the Bonehunters is one of the fastest paced books of the series. Like with a lot of the other books, you have these moments where they're like slowed down, and you have these like very, very personal, private, very calm, like touching moments. There's very few of those in here. There's like, obviously there's at the beginning there's Absalom getting drunk, which is super important, but apart from that, it's like a lot of it is just people marching or getting burned, or marching or getting burned, or both at the same time. And it doesn't actually let, like, the pace doesn't slow down. You don't have that those quiet, calm, very interpersonal moments that much in this one. And so yeah, it's very much about walking and getting burned most of the time.
Yeah, totally.
What
I
would
think
be yours?
my word, it has to be faith, not so much in terms of religion. Yeah, I think religion had a lot to do, but also like the faith, like there were so many dilemmas between characters of where they should put their faith in. Like we saw it with Callum and Quick Ben trying to decide whether they should put faith in Tavore, whether they should stick with the Empire. We saw it in Karsa Orlong with the Anibar placing faith in Karsa. Then we saw it also with the Parish at the end of the book, placing faith in Tavore. We saw it all the time, all these dynamics between cultures and empires and characters and relationships. So I think that would be the and obviously the faith between worshipper and the god or the goddess. I think that would be my word. But I think it's a book that for me it has everything that makes a fantasy novel just amazing, and just any novel really, because it has everything. So yeah, I think it's a really enjoyable book, and it's mostly loved in the Malazan community with reason, because it's amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anything to add, guys?
I'm fine.
All good?
Yeah, me too. I think that's
Yeah.
me.
So I just want to thank
All
you
right,
guys.
there's one thing. It's like, since my spirit animal is Winnie the Pooh, I will just say eat more honey, and you can totally take the psychedelic one.
Yeah.
I would.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah. That moment was just amazing in this book, and then especially because they found out the other day that it exists.
It's the same.
That honey,
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
so. Yeah, that was really enjoyable. So yeah, I just wanted to thank you guys for this awesome conversation. This was great. It's just really nice to kind of talk about the book once you finish it and get your thoughts out, and then just hearing how other people felt about certain things. So I just wanted to thank you so much to you both, and yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for having me. It was great.